I'm Tim Challies. I'm a writer from Canada. Ever since I was a child, I've professed the Christian faith. As a Christian, I know I'm a small part of a great story that God is unfolding around the world and through the ages. I've always had a longing to better understand that story. For all my life, I've devoured books about what God is accomplishing around His world. But I've always wanted to do more than read. I've wanted to go. I've wanted to explore, to discover, to touch, to feel. This year, I've been given the opportunity to travel the world to search for historical objects through which I can better understand the history of the Christian faith. My first journey takes me to the ancient cities of Jerusalem and Rome, where so much of our story begins. I've arrived in Jerusalem, and I'm here for a couple of purposes. First, I'm here to explore museums and churches and everywhere else I can find to look for historic objects through which I can tell the story of the Christian faith. The Christian faith has existed for 2,000 years. There's a long, long line to explore. I'm looking for objects that will help me tell the story of what Christ has done in this world. I'm also interested in exploring this idea of holy places or holy cities. As I researched this trip, I kept encountering this notion that Jerusalem is the most holy place, the most holy city in Christendom, and that there's certain locations here that are especially holy. And I'm very interested in exploring, what does that mean? What does that look like? Is that even something we should concern ourselves with? We're just heading into the Israel Museum. It's Israel's national museum. It's got an amazing collection, and I'm really excited to see a couple of things related especially to biblical times. I expect there will be hopefully 2 or 3 objects there that would be a great fit for this whole project I'm doing. One of the objects I really wanted to find for the project was an object related to the Crusades. That's a key part of the story of the Christian faith. I thought this would be the museum to find something. As you can see, I had a lot of trouble tracking something down. This is all stuff that was taken by the Crusaders back home. Medicine jars, bowls, things of that nature. So nothing that really told a story, but I knew that even failing that, there was an area where this museum would speak, and would speak loudly. So Pontius Pilate, we know from Scripture, we know him as being very involved in the crucifixion of Jesus, and yet there's very little historical evidence of his existence. Some people have even doubted that he ever was a historical character, but then they found this stone, which has an inscription and says on it that this building was made in honor of Tiberius the emperor by Pontius Pilate, who was the procurator of Judea. And so here's this historical evidence. It was used in a building and then reused in a different building and discovered much later on. This evidence that he did exist, that he was indeed ruling in Judea in the time of Jesus Christ, at the time of his death. And this is exactly what I meant when I said I wanted to find objects that tell a story beyond themselves. This is the most mundane of objects in one way. And yet, when you look at it carefully, you look at it through historical eyes, through Christian eyes, this thing tells an amazing story. And it really fills in a part of Christian history, just as a stone, just as a rock. This is an interesting object. This is a stone from the temple. And the inscription on it, it's only partial, but there are other ones as well. There are many of these around the temple. And it's warning foreigners away from the temple, saying that if you go in, we can't be responsible for what happens to you if you go into the temple. And so here's this distinction between Jews, God's people, and Gentiles, the others. And of course, Jesus prophesied the temple would be destroyed. It was. This is one of the remnants of it. And yet in this inscription we see how important it is that Jesus has made a way for all people. And so the gospel now extends to all nations, tribes, peoples, and languages. And this stone, even the fact that it's destroyed, has some interesting significance in teaching us that. Sometimes I'd go into museums knowing specifically what I was going to see there. Other times things happen just serendipitously. You're just looking around. That was the case with this. I just love this stone. You hear about these things as you read the Bible. You understand there's a distinction between Jews and Gentiles. Here it is, clearly laid out on this rock. And here's an affirmation that now God has welcomed us all in. What a beautiful little object in that way.
So Tim, where are we going right now?
Going to McDonald's. Just figure wherever you go in the world, you gotta stop by McDonald's and see what's different there. We didn't know it at the time, but this was the beginning of what became a tradition. We went to McDonald's in pretty much every country we went to, 21 by the end of the year, to sample the local menu.
So Tim, how was your meal?
I'd say disappointing. The burger they gave me, it did not look like the burger in the picture. This was the Mega Mick America burger, New York style. It was not delicious. But thanks for asking. On our first day in Jerusalem, we visited the Israel Museum, which was phenomenal and contained really exactly the kind of thing we were hoping to find. Then we just set out to explore the rest of the city. Trying to go where the crowds are now. Thank you. Thank you. This is the Garden Tomb, right? Where they say possibly Jesus was laid. There's no historical evidence, but it is a tomb that was discovered in roughly the area where Jesus was crucified. So this is opened now as the tomb. We don't know if that's the case. It's been interesting to watch people from all around the world coming here and seeing it, and some of them having little worshipful experiences outside and just enjoying the possibility that maybe this is where Jesus was laid. And of course, right on the door it says, "He is not here, for he is risen," which is the big point, that there is no body in here. So whether it's his tomb or not, it's a tomb, and it's an empty tomb, which at least makes us realize Christ is risen. But is it holy? Is it a holy place? It's not. It's just another place. And so there's a way of going there and gaining encouragement and seeing something historical, seeing the kind of place Jesus may have been laid that's helpful to us as Christians. But it's not holy. There's no intrinsic power or holiness to be had by going there. We're here at the Western Wall, which is, of course, I guess the most sacred site in Judaism, and it's the remnants of the temple. It was built thousands of years ago. This is all that remains of it, and it's, of course, a place that people come today to pray. They call it the Western Wall, or the Wailing Wall, the wailing reflecting the sound of the prayers being offered. And so as you look over the plaza, you'll see there's a women's section for women to pray, a men's section for men to pray. And anyone's allowed to go down there, provided you put a little head covering on. You can go down, you can just see it, or you can go up to the wall and pray. And you've probably heard people often put prayers, they write them and roll them up and stick them into the wall there. And it's considered an area of pilgrimage, or just a place to see in Jerusalem. Actually going in there?
Yeah.
Is that actually right?
It's right.
Check the sign and make sure that's what it says to do.
It is like that.
All right.
Yeah.
Hey Ryan, you want to go first?
Is it slippery?
No.
them dark for a bit just to the effect.
Hezekiah's Tunnel sounds like a really neat thing to experience, and it is, I guess. It's a little scary. You get down into this tunnel, you realize as you go, it's getting, well, it's very wet, it's getting humid. If somebody's coming toward you, you're walking backward for a very long period of time. So it's fun, I recommend it, but do be aware of what you're getting into. Got some gifts for my kids. I got coffee for my son because he's kind of addicted already. Nick, I love you. And just some little jewelry trinkets for my girls. Everywhere I go and try and buy them something small that lets them know I'm thinking about them while I'm gone. So I went to a stall here in the old city and got them a couple little gifts that I think they'll enjoy. Still no new and interesting objects in sight, so we set out for the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, one of those tourist spots you just have to see when you're in Jerusalem. It has a lot of grand claims about what you'll find there, what you'll see there, and what it marks as a historical location. We're going into the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which is reputedly the place where Jesus was crucified, and the place where he was buried, and the place he was resurrected. So we'll go inside and see what we can find. So we've just come out of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which is an interesting sort of mishmash of buildings built at different times and different styles. And it's also a conglomeration of many different denominations. So there's a lot of activity inside that's religious, a lot of activity inside that has some vague notion of Christianity, and yet a whole lot of superstition. You've got Jesus' supposed tomb in there, you've got a piece of the stone that was rolled away from in front of the tomb, you've got the actual rocks or stone where the cross was placed, you've got even the place where Adam is said to have been buried, all of that inside this church. And of course, from our perspective, we look at it and know that a lot of it is just silliness. It's not true. It's a whole bunch of relics that have been brought here, a lot of stuff that has been fabricated here, and I guess all done in the name of the Lord. Yet what you see is people worshiping and venerating all sorts of different expressions of Christianity or Christendom, and yet very little that would remind you of truly the cross of Jesus Christ and the atoning work he did there, our full and final salvation before God. I've got Jerusalem off to my left here, the old city and the Temple Mount. And this is the Garden of Gethsemane, where of course Jesus agonized on the final night of his life. What an interesting thing that from a nearby minaret we hear the Muslim call to prayer. I guess that shows just some of the clash of cultures here in Jerusalem, where we have Islam, we have Christianity, and of course we have Judaism. This was my first visit to Jerusalem. I thoroughly enjoyed it. There was so much to see, so much to do, and even some objects that were a great fit for my project. But there's another ancient city I needed to see, the city of Rome. I came to Rome expecting to find objects related to a couple of different periods of history. Rome, of course, is where much ancient Christian history took place, so I knew there would be some objects there, but it's also closely related to the Reformation, so I wanted to explore that angle as well. So I was there to look for history about 1,500 years apart. In quite a lot of the cities, I met people along the way. Sometimes they were friends who found an excuse to come along on a journey. Sometimes they were locals who gave up a day or two to spend some time with me. It was wonderful to be able to not only have these experiences, but in many cases to have these experiences with other people. The Vatican museums have this vast collection of sculptures, of statues, and I think the best of them, or the most important anyway for my purposes, was this, Augustus of Prima Porta. Caesar Augustus was Caesar when Jesus was born, so as we tell the story of the birth of Christianity, we need to account for this man and his incredible impact on the Roman world, the ancient world at that time. Caesar Augustus made many, many contributions to the ancient world and to the Roman world. Maybe the one he's best known for now is ushering in this Roman peace, this Pax Romana. And it was this Roman peace that allowed there to be great stability within the empire. And that stability, in a strange way, allowed the Christians to spread their gospel. He created an amazing road system. The Christians walked those roads carrying the gospel from place to place. He created a great trading system which was used to move goods, but it also moved missionaries as they carried the gospel. And so in his own way, though he was a pagan, in his own way, he made this great contribution to the Christian faith. When you make a film like this, you can make everything just seem like it's all nicely tied together. The strange reality here, this was actually my second trip to Rome because the first time I came, for inexplicable reasons and things I could not have known in advance, everything was closed, or pretty much everything was closed. I went to Rome, I tried to see the objects, they were just unavailable, so I had to just cut my losses and come back. This is the Palatine Hill in the heart of Rome. There's so much ancient history right here on this hill, but there's one thing that's of particular interest to me. At the top of the hill is the Palatine Hill Museum, and I believe there's an object in there that will be key to this project. Domus Augustana, so the House of Augustus. Nothing left. Ruins. The most powerful man. Nothing remains. How do we get to the first floor?
Yeah, from the outside.
Outside?
Yeah.
The history of Christianity can really be told as a history of persecution, especially the early Christians. And there's an object here that tells that story in a remarkable way, and I think makes a brilliant connection from the ancient church to the contemporary church. If you ask me, one of the best objects in the Palatine Hill Museum, really I think one of the best objects in all of Rome, is, it goes by different names, but I most often hear it called the Alexamenos Graffito. It's an old piece of graffiti that was scratched in plaster. You gotta look carefully at it, and you'll see eventually the image of a man on a cross. You look carefully and you see that he's got the head of a donkey. And then beneath him is a man kneeling in worship, looking up at this man with the head of a donkey on a cross. And a little inscription says, Alexamenos worships his God. And so this is a mockery of an early Christian. And I believe it's one of the earliest portrayals, maybe the earliest portrayal of Christ on the cross as well. So a fascinating little piece of Christian history that shows as Christianity grew into the Roman Empire, immediately Christians were attacked, not just formally through governments, but also informally through people who marveled that anyone could do something so ridiculous as worshiping a man who had been crucified on a Roman cross. We found lots of ancient history within the Vatican museums. That's what we went looking for. But we learned, actually, as we were touring through the museums, that there's a little bit of Reformation history there, though it's not on display in the same sense. You got to know where it is. You got to go looking for it. But in the years after the Reformation, some German soldiers were involved in sacking Rome. They went into the Raphael rooms there in the museums, and they left behind a little token of their visit. They scratched the name Luther into one of the paintings there. We're approaching the Scala Sancta here, the sacred stairs where pilgrims are known to go up on their knees, and if they do so successfully, there are indulgences available to them. Of course, Martin Luther famously came here, and this was part of what he did in an attempt to be holy enough for God, an attempt to prove his contrition before God. And yet this was another thing that he found empty, and he realized could not satisfy his soul and could not appease his God. One of the elements of Roman Catholic practice that so inflamed the reformers was the system of indulgences. And a lot of Protestants think that indulgences are a past practice of Catholicism, not a present practice. But if you visit the Scala Sancta and read the placards on the way in, you'll see they're very much alive today. It says there, if you go on a Friday in Lent or one other time of your year and you go up those stairs on your knees, you'll receive a full indulgence. And that can also be applied to somebody in purgatory instead of to yourself. Or if you go other times of the year, you can get a partial indulgence. And so that system is alive and well, and you can see at any given time many people, 20, 30, 40 people going up the stairs on their knees, others going up the stairs on their feet, seeking those indulgences that continue to this day. Most people associate the Pope with St. Peter's Basilica, of course, and rightly so, but the papal seat is actually St. John Lateran Church, and it's one of so many churches, so many cathedrals in this city, and each one seems grander than the last. When Roman Catholics come to St. Peter's Basilica, they come to worship, they come to make pilgrimage. There's many reasons they come. As Protestants, we see it through different eyes. We see St. Peter's as being closely connected to the Reformation. After all, it was built with the money collected from all those indulgences. And so we come here, we see this grand building, this in many ways beautiful building, and yet we see something else. We see the reason the Reformation had to happen. It's the kind of thing you probably don't think about, but where do priests and bishops and archbishops and others get their clothing? Well, apparently they must get it here. I knew in Rome I would find some objects related to the very early church, and I did. There were some wonderful ones, but I also wanted to look for some objects that would tell the story of the Reformation. Near the heart of Rome is the mother church of the Jesuit order, and I went in there looking for a strange object, a relic, which is the forearm of St. Francis Xavier, and I found it. But as I turned around, I saw an object that I thought was even better, even more evocative, told an even better story. Behind me is this remarkable sculpture that goes by the title, The Triumph of Faith Over Heresy. And as you look, you see Mary triumphing over two men who are being thrown into hell. There's a snake, a serpent all intertwined with them. If you look closely, you'll see the men have books going with them down into the pit. One of those books is labeled Martin Luther, the other is labeled John Calvin. So clearly what this is meant to communicate is the church, Mary, triumphing over the Protestant heretics. And this is why the Jesuit order exists, to triumph over Protestantism. It's interesting to see the angel there tearing the vernacular Bible apart, the Bible that was so important to the Reformation. Meanwhile, Mary is clutching the true scriptures, the Vulgate scriptures that are the guardian of the church. So this sculpture, this piece of propaganda, very clearly, powerfully tells why the Jesuit order exists. It's time for me to move on. Here in Jerusalem and Rome, I found objects that help tell the story of the founding of the Christian faith and then the recovery of that foundation at the Reformation. As my time in these ancient cities draws to a close, it strikes me that for thousands of years, Judaism has remained centered in Jerusalem. In a similar way, Catholicism has remained centered in Rome. But the gospel of Jesus Christ has no headquarters. It has no temple. It has no pope. We are God's temple. We are God's representatives on earth. I look forward to continuing my journey to learn more about how God has been at work and still is at work all around the world.